Hello and welcome to the TechHub.training Alteryx COVID-19 Find and Replace Challenge. If we pull up the instructions, we can see that we're trying to create a report for our manager that tells what orders were placed and how many different shipping methods were used in 2020. Our report should include only orders that were placed in 2020, the sales rep name, job type name, and a count of each relevant shipping type, excluding those delivered by the salesman in separate columns. And then we should have a column at the end that has the year 2020 in it. So if we pull up Alteryx here, we can go ahead and zoom in on this solution. The first step, as outlined in the instructions, is to download the challenge in the data dictionary, familiarize ourselves with the data, and import the data into Alteryx. We'll need to import the orders table, the job type table, employee table, and freight table. So I've gone ahead and done that. Here's the orders table, the job types table, employee table, and the freight table. To start off, we're going to need to, as the instructions say, change the relevant job types, job type ID, sales rep, and freight ID to allow the find and replace tool. If we come down here to the hint, it says the find and replace tool can only work on string data fields. As you may know, the fields that we are working with this time, specifically the job type ID, sales rep ID, and freight ID, are all originally doubles, so we need to go ahead and change those to strings. Next, per the instructions, we need to filter so that we are only looking at the year 2020. So if we pull up that filter tool, we can go ahead and filter on order date, where the range is between year 2020, month January, date 1st, through year 2020, month 12, day 31. If we do a quick manual check of the output, you can see that the order dates were all placed in 2020. Next, we're going to start using our find and replace tools. So in each of these, our job type input, we'll also need to use a select tool. This will help us just make sure that our job type ID is also a string so that it can function in the find and replace tool. When it comes to configuring the find and replace tool, we're going to find within our job type ID the value job type ID and then replace with the text job type. So what that is going to do is it's going to pull information from here and it's going to look through this and find this number. So for example, number 3. And then it's going to come over to the job types table. It's going to find job type number 3 and replace it with the words screen printing. That's what this says. So find within the field of this table, job type ID. Then we're going to look up job type ID in this table and replace it with job type from this table. So as you can see, after we run through our find and replace tool, our job type ID column has changed to where it now says screen printing and has words as opposed to having numbers. We're going to go ahead and do the same thing for sales rep ID and freight ID. So we'll start with the sales rep ID. We're going to use an input tool to pull our employees table. Use a select tool to change the employee ID to a string, and then use the find and replace tool to find the sales rep ID within this table, then find the value employee ID within this table, and replace it with employee name from within this table. And as you can see with the output here, we've successfully replaced those. And finally, we're going to do that to the freight ID. So we'll use an input tool to enter the freight table, use a select tool to change the freight ID to a string, and then the find and replace tool to find the freight ID within this table, find the freight ID within this table, and then replace the freight ID with freight type also found in this table. At this point, our output should look fairly readable. A normal person wouldn't have to go back and reference other databases, and this is what we're hoping for. So now we're going to enter another select tool. Let's actually go back and read the instructions. So we've accomplished step 2. Now it says the crosstab tool is designed to use numeric data. Use a select tool to change the JT num to a double. For many of you, this may already be a case, but we just need to go make sure that this job ticket number is in fact a double, which is a number. Next, use a text input tool to manually create the desired input. So this is the step where we're adding 2020 in its own separate column. So we can go ahead and create this text input. You'll go up to favorites, use a text input tool, and then just create a new cell with the information in it. We'll use that in just a second. What this crosstab tool is going to do, so we're going to use it to take this column here, freight ID, and make them all separate columns. So we'll have a column for UPS, a column for will call, a column for dropship. So as the picture demonstrates, it's going to take a column and turn it into individual columns. So in order to do that, we want to keep job type ID and sales rep ID as their own individual columns. This way we can see how many orders how many embroidery orders Emily Brooks had shipped by each method. How many orders Samuel Clarkson had shipped by each method. So we want to keep those and group by those values. We'll change the column headers to be the freight ID, as you can see, dropship, FedEx, so on and so forth. And then we'll use the job ticket number, a count of the job ticket number, to fill in the values of those cells. So for example, Jessica Evans had 50 dropship orders. Going back to that text input, we'll now use the text input tool and a new tool called the append tool. If you come up here to join, go to append, here's that append tool. And what it does is it will join something from the S field onto every line of the T field. Once again, make sure the larger data set is connected to the T and the smaller data set is connected to the S. As for configuring this, we want our target field to be here, and then our source is going to be this unknown field 1, which comes from here. And what that will do is it will create an output that looks like this, where there is a new field that says 2020 in it. Now we'll use the select tool just to clean things up and to get rid of the sales rep delivery rows. So we will go ahead and clean up and get rid of, change field 1 to be called year, move it to the top. To move one of these, all you need to do is select it and then use these little arrow tools, and that will move it from left to right. We'll go ahead and select only the ones that we want, and then use a filter tool. Use a sort tool to sort according to the instructions. The instructions up here say orders should appear based on sales rep from A to Z and job type from A to Z. So sales rep ascending, job type ascending. And finally, we'll use an output tool. This tool may be new to several of you. Up here, we will need to select a file path where we want it to go. You can use the Setup Connection button to select a file where you want this to go. Then the file format should automatically populate, but if not, select Microsoft Excel. And this one here is important. We can choose to append to an existing sheet or just add the information to an existing sheet every time, overwrite that sheet, overwrite the entire file, or create new sheet. I personally prefer to use the overwrite sheet or range. That way, if we need to write data to two separate sheets within a field, an Excel file, we can. So we'll go ahead and select that. And if we run this, then come into our File Explorer, we should now have an output that shows all of our data output for 2020 in a nice, neat Excel. From here, if we needed to perform any other calculations or clean things up, we totally could. Thank you once again for reviewing this challenge with me. We encourage you to continue trying different challenges on TechHub.training and look forward to seeing you more.